funny case with Ben Shmoshes. Why can't I just agree that Tashmish Aydei Chak is a good Tashmish, and therefore it is Rosh Hashanah? Why am I so adamant about saying that Tashmish Aydei Chak is not considered a Tashmish? It's not considered a proper use of a bor. Zogt the Gemara, I'm not just pushing you off. I have hard rayas that prove that Tashmish Aydei Chak is not a good Tashmish, and therefore I have no choice but to defend that position. And where is my bona fide raya? It's none. If you're driving down Bathurst Street and you hit one of its abundant potholes, then Hazorik Lasoicha Dal Ramis. The halacha is, if you throw an object 4 amas from Rosh Hashanah, you make it a cure from Rosh Hashanah, it travels 4 amas, and then it makes the Hanoch from Rosh Hashanah, that's a chiv deraisa. Well, what if it landed in this puddle, in this pothole? Right? So is this pothole considered a Rosh Hashanah Lagabi the Hanocha? And therefore you're a chayiv. So the halacha is, if there was a big pothole, or Rosh Hashanah boy, and the Rosh Hashanah is running right through it, then you'll be chayiv. So clearly you see that this root, even though it's going through a puddle, you're still chayiv. It's still considered Rosh Hashanah. The kamahu rekek mayim. What defines the difference between a pothole and a hole that people wouldn't use? If it's less than 10 tefachim, then we say it's still considered part of Rosh Hashanah. If the pothole is more than 10 tefachim, then it's not called Rosh Hashanah, which is similar to how the city of Toronto works. If the hole is 6 feet deep, then they'll send out a pothole crew and maybe they'll patch it. If not, too bad, you have to pay for your own tires and for your own suspension repairs, right? Because we have holes all over Bathurst Street. It's amazing how the Gemara knows our Bathurst Street.
It proves Bathurst Street is Rosh Hashanah.
Now, in a but which halachically it's not. Anyway, so let's take a step back. The Gemara, if you look at the brayso, a very funny brayso, it repeats itself. So let's read it. And then the brayso repeats itself. So repeat. Now there's 2 repetitions. There's repetition A, rekek mayim, it says twice, and repetition B is sherishus harabim mahalachas boy, that a city street runs through it. I understand why the brayso repeated the case twice, talked about a puddle twice. You know why? Because a puddle has different usage in the winter than it has in the summer. And we need to tell you that the puddle less than 10 tefachim is considered part of the Rosh Hashanah. And we need to tell you that in the winter as well, a puddle is part of the Rosh Hashanah that's used. And you need actually the brayso to tell you both. If the brayso would only have told us that a puddle in the summer is considered part of the Rosh Hashanah, that's because people like puddles. You know why? You ever walked on Bathurst on a sweltering, sweaty day, and you see a puddle on Bathurst, and you want to just jump in to cool off? So that's how it was in those days. A guy was sweltering hot. He's walking down the street. He's happy to jump into a puddle. So therefore, the puddle blends right into the Rosh Hashanah. I will be moisak shamim, where I don't need to cool myself off. I'm pretty hot. I'm pretty hot, cold as it is. Maybe then a puddle is not considered part of the Rosh Hashanah. Or if the brayso would have only told us that in the winter this puddle is part of Rosh Hashanah, then I say, out of the mitnif, since anyway you're filthy, you're walking in the mud, you don't mind walking through it, you'll ignore it, you won't avoid the puddle, you won't go around it. Where you don't want to get dirty in a puddle, you would walk around it, and therefore it's not a Rosh Hashanah. Shricha, that's why the brayso repeated itself twice to tell us that Psaini Moisak Shamim and Psaini Mois Hachama, a puddle that's in a roadway, is considered part of the roadway. Why did the brayso need to say Rishus Harabim Halachas Boy? The brayso could have said like this: Im Hoyer Rekek Mayim Rishus Harabim Halachas Boy Hazorek L'Zech Dal Ramas Chayiv, and then they could have said Rekamu Rekek Mayim Pochus Mitzvachim, and then they could have said Rekek Mayim Hazorek L'Zech Dal Ramas Chayiv. Why did they have to repeat again Rishus Harabim Mehalachas Boy? Lomali El Shema Mino Hiluch Aydei Tchak Shmei Hiluch Tashma Aydei Tchak Lo Shmei Tashmish. What did the brayso say? The brayso says that what was this puddle used for? It was used to drive through. It was on the road, in the middle of the road. That, the Brisa says, if it's in the middle of the road, and it's a road that you drive through, people are not going to detour around it, whether it's in the winter or whether it's in the summer. But what if it wasn't in the roadway? What if it was at the side of the roadway, and the reason why we want to consider it part of the Reshus HaRabim is because many people store objects in there, which is what we're talking about. We're not talking about Hiluch Al-Yidei Chak. Hiluch Al-Yidei Chak, Rav agrees to, is part of the Reshus HaRabim. But Tashrus Al-Yidei Chak, if something that's not part of the main roadway, it's off to the side, but we want to consider it Reshus HaRabim because people use it to place things in, there, if it's Al-Yidei Chak, it wouldn't be enough to make it into Reshus HaRabim. So since the Brisa repeats both cases, Reshus HaRabim Mahaleches Boy, it's trying to emphasize it's only because of Reshus HaRabim Mahaleches Boy that we're saying that even though it's not pleasant, it's at Al-Yidei Chak when you drive through it, it's still considered Reshus HaRabim. Because if it had the Tashrus Al-Yidei Chak, then it would not have been considered Reshus HaRabim Shema Mina. That make sense? So that's why he repeats it twice. So Rabbi says, I have a brisa that seems to be almost explicit that Tashmish Al-Yidei Chak is not Shmei Tashmish. Because of that, I'm forced to say that you may not take something from a bar up into the Reshus HaRabim. And because of that, I have to twist myself to make sure that it jives with the other brises that you asked me a kasha from. Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, this is where we see Chazal invented the wheel. Does anybody, do you know who invented the wheel? Because we're going to discuss now about inventing the wheel.
It was BC, that comic, wasn't it?
I think it was even by the Flintstones they had it already.
They had, where's one? I'll see what tells you.
So we're going to see about the wheel. Rabbi Yehuda, Hi Zirza, if you have a bundle, it was like a bale. It was a bundle or a bale of reeds. It was very heavy, you couldn't just lift it on your shoulder and walk with it. So the way you would move it is, imagine you have an object that's 4 feet long. It's a bundle. It's 4 feet long and has a diameter of up to 12 inches and it weighs 500 pounds. You can't carry that. So what you do is you lift one end until it's standing up, and then you throw it over, and then you lift the other end and you throw it over, and slowly roll at a time. It's like this, right? Right. So that's how you slowly move it. Right. The other way to move it is just to drag it, but we're talking about if you moved it this way. So basically, what happens is you're making an akira on this side, but there's never an akira on that side. When I turn it over, then I'm making an akira here. So only half of the object is ever having an akira in anocha, but the other half is not having it. So what did you say? Hi zirza de kani, rama v'zakfei. You lift it up and you put it over. You lift it up and put it over. Lo mechayiv. Even if you cross the border from Reshus HaYachid into Reshus HaRabim, or if you traveled 4 amos in Reshus HaRabim with that pattern, you won't be mechayiv ad okerle until the whole thing is uprooted. So let's see what Tosfos says. It's a longish Tosfos, but it's a very easy Tosfos. Lo mechayiv ad okerle my terrific Tosfos. My kamash malon. Pshita, the lo mechayiv. It's pashut that you're not chayiv for doing that. Kivin do yakar. You didn't make a full akira. So I need to, who did it tell me that you're not over? Void mashayich hacha hachmilsa. What in the world is this halacha doing here? We're in the middle of discussing shiur that chak and leaning on pillars and storing things in bows. What in the world does that have to do with this package business? The Shlomy the kamash malon the afagav the derech loy licha binyan zeh shein kaln l'noisam. Even though this is the norm, how you transport such an object. Therefore, have a kamoy omid l'kasef. When you every time you put it over, it should be just like I'm stopping to rest for a minute, which we learned earlier is not a hefsek in the traveling. It's not mafsek to travel. The chayiv, we said it's chayiv there. Afilu over here it's putter. Why? Because this is not just like resting. This is literally you never ever made an akira on the whole object. So why is it again our sugya? Since we talked about this post that was 9 tefachim high, which is the perfect height to lean on, to rest on, to put your things on. That's why it's relevant over here. Now, this is the interesting part. V'davka rama v'zokfei. Davka, if you moved it in exactly that manner, lifting up one end and pushing it over itself. When you place the one edge of the chayvetz out of Dal Ramis, the other edge, munach b'sech Dal, is still within the Dal Ramis. And then when he flips over the other end to get the whole thing into Dal Ramis, Adayin Mischayiv, he's still not chayiv. Dava Kemegar HaChefetz, Atchahoshi Rosh HaChefetz Chutol Dal Aramis. The loch is, if you drag a long bundle, and you drag it, and you leave it on the border of Dal Aramis, so half of it has traveled Dal Aramis, and the other half has not traveled Dal Aramis, and then, and then you stopped, and then you continue pulling it into the Dal Aramis fully, even though you end up pulling the whole object, you drag the whole object out of the 4 amis, you're going to be potter. You know why? The malacha of moving the whole chayfetz, Dal Aramis, didn't happen at once. It happened in stages, and that's not mechayiv you. Aval imagayis zirza, the koni b'vasachas. But if you dragged a bundle, the same bundle that we're talking about, you just dragged it in one movement, 4 amis, and then you let go of it after 4 amis, then aval imagayis zirza, the koni b'vasachas at chutol Dal Aramis, oy mishusayach l'shus rabim, chayiv, that would be chayiv. Dragging things is a legitimate method of transport, and you would be chayiv for hitzah. So that's a very important halacha that the Tosfos is telling us. If you were pulling, a guy left his money in his rishus hayachid, and you dragged it out because it was very heavy, potter, you'll be potter from the din of Geneva to pay back, because you were mechal Shabbos in the same act as you were stealing, and we have a halacha of kamei b'drabimnei. Since we're killing you, you get to keep your money. Now we're talking about inventing the wheel. What if you roll a barrel?
Oh, sorry. Finish.
What if you roll a barrel 4 amos rishus rabim? Chayiv. Because rolling a barrel is not like lifting up this package that we were talking about. It's just like you're dragging something. The einoi noch klal, it never rests. It's constantly moving because it's around, I guess. But if you have a cube and you try rolling it, right? So that doesn't roll so well. Then you're potter to have a kamoirama v'zokfei, like our case in our Gemara. The ever shalot tehei nochaksas. One half of it is going to stay on the ground, and therefore it's not a proper akira nocha. But when you're rolling something, there's also one part that's always on the ground. But somehow rolling it is like dragging it, and therefore you would be chayiv.
So just back to the Ganev, at what point was he over Shabbos?
When he crossed from the Rishus Hayachid into the Rishus Rabbim. And at that moment he was also moitzid from the guy's Rishus.
Okay, and then he was koine, and therefore it's as if he was a Ganev. So if he steals it in Rishus Rabbim, he went
into... If the Geneva occurred later...
The Geneva occurred in the Rishus Rabbim. He didn't go into Rishus Hayachid to steal it. He was schlepping it in Rishus Rabbim.
So he wasn't over Shabbos, he was only over Geneva.
Yeah. So he wasn't over Shabbos. That's what I'm saying. Right. So dragging Rishus Rabbim, then he'd have to pay. So
if you want to get away with it, make sure you get killed in the way.
Right. So I don't know if someone can create the Rishus Rabbim in the Rishus Hayachid and put the money above. No, but really dragging it.
We're erlich enough. You know, people might be gone, but they'd never be.
Yeah. Right.
How is the drag? You said drag. It's possible to drag. Though part of it is Dal Aramis and part of it is not.
I was thinking the same question. How could you drag the front Dal Aramis, not the back? If this moved 4 amas, this moved 4 amas.
Right.
So I think what has to happen is the even the back has to move 4 amas past the front. So this entire place, you count the 4 amas from here. Yeah, otherwise, if the front moved 4 amas, obviously the back moved 4 amas. I was thinking the same thing.
It can also be that it's things that are attached to one another. He's pulling like a train. So he pulls the front 4 parts, but the other parts haven't moved yet at all. Like things are attached one to another.
Now you're saying a chiddush, that if he pulled a train, you don't look at each car by itself. You have to pull the whole train.
But it's attached one to another.
So right. Is that so? I don't know that. Look, it's a chiddush. Here we're talking about one object. You want to say even multiple objects that happen to be fastened together would be ma'akev? I'm not sure. If you pull a whole train car,
the other part doesn't move at all. The back doesn't move at all.
It moves.
It moved a little bit. It got schlepped at the end. The last foot, it just moved a little bit of the foot.
About where it's not all in a lure, it's like it's turned. So when you pull it, it doesnn't pull right away. But I'll call upon him. That's a whole different child. I don't know what would be with that. Okay. Zogte the Gemara weiter. Where are we up to? Oberman. Adam, this is a little complicated. Oberman. Adam Omed Al Skupo. One of the poems of the earlier brisa that discussed the 4 rishuyos. So we already discussed Rishus HaYachid. We already discussed Rishus Harabim. We already discussed Carmelus, and now we're talking about what was the Mokum Torah. So the Brisa said, Adam Oimid Allah Skupa, a person standing on the threshold, Noitel mi Balabayis, he's allowed to take from the Rishus HaYachid from the Balabayis, and he can give to the Balabayis. So you're allowed to move from this Askupa, you're allowed to move goods to and fro to the Rishus HaYachid, and Noitel mi Ani v'Noisin, and you're allowed to move goods to and fro from the Ani. So it's like a free trade zone. It's like an Indian reservation, really. It's like an Indian reservation, because you can get through it with free trade. Hi Askupa Mai. So let's analyze exactly what is the makeup of this Askupa and why can you freely transport goods to and from Rishus Harabim and to and from Rishus HaYachid. Ilema Askufas Rishus Harabim, if you're talking about an Askufa that's in the Rishus Harabim, now what would be the construction of that? So Rashi says, what does Askupas Rishus Harabim mean? Kagoin Askufas Mavui, She'ein Aleha Tikra, Ve'ein Goy Ve'gimel Min HaKarka. So let's explain what's going on over here. A main thoroughfare is going to be the Rishus Harabim. A mavoi would be a side street that hits the Rishus Harabim. So just to make it easy for us, imagine that you have Bathurst would be the Rishus Harabim. Louis Sir was Rishus Harabim, and Carmichael would be the mavoi. The corner of Bathurst and Carmichael is where you enter from the Rishus Harabim to the mavoi. Now in the olden days, all the streets had walls. Everything had walls. So when you turned into a side street, even on the main street, there were stone fences on either side. They had major guardrails everywhere. They had stone fences on the side of either either side of Rishus Harabim. When you turned into a Movi, again, the stone wall just turned, and then you have a like a corridor. It looked like a stone corridor basically that had doorways in it. So you're actually in a stone corridor, and that would be the Movi. Now you're on the threshold right at the edge of the Movi, before it opens up into the Rishus Harabim. So where the white line is, by the red light, where that white line is, that's, let's say, what we would call the threshold. So that's what Rashi referred to. Askupas mavui, you're on the threshold of a mavui. She'ein ala tikra, it's not roofed, it doesn't have a roof over it, it's open. Ve'ein gavoy min hakarka. Ve'ein gavoy gimel min hakarka. This threshold that you're on is raised, but it's not raised 3 tefachim from the karka. So it's not bottled to the Rishus Harabim. I'm sorry, it is bottled to the Rishus Harabim. If it's not raised 3 tefachim, we said earlier, anything in Rishus Harabim that's not raised is bottled to the Rishus Harabim. V'lechi shel mavi lefnim himano. Now, Rashi is telling us a new thing. In order, really a mavi is not a Rishus Harabim. The main street is Rishus Harabim. You can't carry the aramis. The mavi is not Rishus Harabim. But the problem Chazal had is, if I'm coming down the street and I turn to the right and I'm in this stone corridor, it's to me just like an artery right off of the main road. So even though halachically it doesn't have the status of Rishus Harabim, and you are allowed to carry something for Amos, but people are not going to be able to make a proper distinction between that Mavli and the main street. And they'll say, hey, if I can carry there for Amos, why can't I carry here for Amos? So the Chachamim said that you need to do something to show people that this is not a regular Rishus Harabim. And you have 2 options as to what you could do. Either you could put up a lechi, meaning you have to put up a post along one of the side walls. So I see something like sticking out of the wall on the side, like this isn't a regular Rishus Harabim. And that's why I will make that distinction that people won't carry in Rishus Harabim, even though they'll carry in the Mavi. The other option you could do is a koira. A koira is a board going across. So you sort of have a small area of roof. That's a tefach wide. Either way, it creates a distinction. It creates a distinction between the Rishus Harabim and the Rishus HaYachid, and then you're allowed to carry in there. So that's what we're talking about. Yada and the skuvas Rishus Harabim, because the skuvas mavi she'ein ala tikra, it didn't have a roof. Ve'ein gavay gimel min hakarka, it was not 3 tefachim high, so it's still bottled to the Rishus Harabim. Ve'lechi shel mavi lefnim himena. If it's inside the mavi, it's not Rishus Harabim, it's considered Rishus HaYachid. No, the lechi was on the inside of the threshold, so the threshold was outside of the lechi. So the lechi is basically on the Rishus Harabim side of the border, which is the lechi. Now we're soon going to see what part of the lechi is the barrier. A lechi is 3-dimensional. So let's say this is the lechi. Okay, let's use the wall. Let's say this is the wall. Okay, this is the side wall of the mavi, and here's my lechi. It's a little bit big for size, right? So does the lechi create the Rishus HaYachid at the front of the lechi, or does it create it at the back? So here's my Rosh Hashanah, I'm turning in, right? I'm turning in over here, and I have my lechi over here. Does the lechi create that the Rosh Hashanah starts here, or does the lechi create that the Rosh Hashanah starts here? We're soon going to see the lechi creates that the Rosh Hashanah starts here. So anything in underneath the lechi itself and forward is regular Rosh Hashanah. So this eskufa would be forward of that. That's what we're talking about, and it has the din of a Rosh Hashanah.
If there was no lechi, where would the Rosh Hashanah start?
If there was no lechi, you couldn't carry anywhere.
Oh, so lechi permits me an extra half a foot?
The lechi says that anything behind the lechi will have the status of Rosh Hashanah,
right?
And there you're allowed to carry freely.
Inside the Rosh Hashanah.
Correct.
And without the lechi,
I
can't carry in the mavui.
That's right. You would not be able to carry in the mavui. Okay, so let's see what it says.
What's the difference between Mavi
Mavi and Carmelus? A Mavi would be treated like a Carmelus if not for the lechi. So a Mavi is only also to carry in Midur Rabbanan, which is exactly the status of a Carmelus, but the Rabbanan gave a solution to make it into a Rosh Hashanah by putting in either the lechi or the koira. If you did that, then behind that we would consider Rosh Hashanah. Would it apply by a Carmelus? It depends on what the Carmelus was. I'm sorry? Well, that's if it has walls around it. A Carmelus has walls on. A Mavi has walls on three sides, right? There's two sides on the back wall. There's many Carmeluses that don't have any walls at all. So, depending on what the Carmelus was, if the Carmelus had the three walls, yeah, in fact, you'd be able to. But if the Carmelus had three walls, then it would be a Mavi.
The Mavi has to have a wall at the end?
It has to have two walls and a wall on the back. If it's foolish, if it's open on both ends, then you cannot correct it. Then you cannot make it into a
Mavi is just a subcategory of a Carmelus.
I'm sorry?
A Mavi is just a subcategory of a Carmelus.
Possibly. The reason why I'm not sure about it is it has a lot of symptoms of a Carmelus. That it's also Midur Rabbanan, and there's a way to fix it.
Yeah.
As I learn more of Shabbos together with the Oberman, we'll learn together. We'll see if there's any other differences. But Carmelus, to me, is it's not a real term, right? It's just a term that's nishtahi nishtaher. It's not quite a Rosh Hashanah. It's not quite a Rosh Hashanah. So Mavi fits that description exactly.
It's an invention of the Rabbanan.
Correct.
Midoraisa, it's a Rosh Hashanah.
Correct. That's right. So it's a rabbinic invention because they just were machmir not to carry there
It looks
because
like it could be this or it could be that.
People
so
won't be able to
do
make that
something to
distinction.
distinguish it.
So when we do a mavui or tzuras pesach somewhere, right, as we go along the Eruv, that's to create the mavui beyond that?
It depends where if you have the church of going on to the 4-1,
Right.
yes.
To end it.
Yeah, so you're looking at it from the 4-1. When you're coming off the 4-1, if you're driving the wrong way, if you're driving the wrong way,
you're coming into the mavui.
I'm going into a mavui.
I'm going to.
That's right.
But really, it's to tell you if you're inside the rabbinical Rosh Hashanah, you're about to leave.
Correct.
Yes.
Not to tell you
Right.
to come
Right.
in.
Okay.
No,
right.
no,
Exactly.
actually,
you can't
we
carry
will
Rosh
soon see
Hashanah.
that it's a signal to the people going from the Rosh Hashanah into the Rosh Hashanah.
Oh.
It's actually a signal for the people on the outside.
But they weren't really allowed to
What?
carry
They
Rosh
can't
Hashanah.
carry-
I'm not sure because
You have no Isurim.
I guess if you see someone carrying in there, you'll say, "Oh, he's carrying in there," because there's that distinction. So people will see other people carrying there, thinking it's a Rosh Hashanah, and they'll say, "Hey, they're carrying a Rosh Hashanah. Maybe you're allowed to." But by seeing that distinction, they'll know, "Oh, this is not a regular Rosh Hashanah. This has a sign, so it's probably different."
I guess putting up a sign that carrying beyond here is not permitted is not like put up a sign
No,
on a
that's,
boat
like,
shul.
that's like putting a sign in your milk, not the gummer.
What was it? Put
No,
up a sign.
put up a sign saying you're not allowed to carry from here in, right? So no one is going to read
Not
the
the-
sign.
But they're gonna look
To
at
put
the
a
Mavi.
post, but to look
Okay,
at
so
the
let's see the Gemara weiter. Let's see the Gemara weiter because we got a lot of work to do. So let's see. So what was the case? If it's in the Skubas Rosh Hashanah, and we're saying that you can go freely from there to Rosh Hashanah and from there to Rosh Hashanah, why? Noitam mi balabayis. How could you possibly take from the balabayis? Hamapik Rosh Hashanah Rosh Hashanah. You're taking from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah because we're saying now that this threshold is on the outside of the lechi. If it's on the outside of the lechi, it's considered Rosh Hashanah. So how could you pass things back and forth from the Rosh Hashanah? Ve'ela askufas Rosh Hashanah. So let's say this is the askufa of Rosh Hashanah, meaning that it's inside the lechi. So the lechi is in front of it. So now it's within the Rosh Hashanah, right? You're allowed to pass to and fro from Rosh Hashanah to this. It has a status of Rosh Hashanah. So that can't be either. So the more el askufas carmelis. It's got to be an askufas carmelis. What is an askufas carmelis? Let's see Rashi. Eina gavoya yud. It's not 10 tefachim high. El roch v'dal. It is 4 tefachim wide. Hechi katani notel lechatchila. Soif is the Rabbanika. So the Gemara is saying it has a din of a carmelis. So it has a din of a carmelis. So that's why there's no chiyuv if you pass to and from Rosh Hashanah or to and from Rosh Hashanah, because we said that a carmelis is really mutter. It's only osir midi rabbanon. In fact, the Gemara again that wouldn't work because the Brisa says noitel v'noisel lechatchila, and we know to pass from a carmelis to Rosh Hashanah and to pass from a carmelis to Rosh Hashanah is osir midi rabbanon. So isur mi isa. Ella, you have to say it's the skufa makam ptur ba'amahu. It's the skufa which is a makam ptur. And what is that? We learned this already. Going the less bedalit al dalit. You have a threshold that's not 4 by 4. It might only be if the threshold has to be the entire opening. So the opening is, let's say, 6 feet, but it's not necessarily 4 tefachim deep. The skufa could be a small strip, only 1 tefach deep.
How high is it?
And it would have to be above 3 tefachim, because if it's less than 3 tefachim, then it's still bottled to the ground.
But
So
even
it would
if
be
it's
above
higher
3
than
tefachim.
10 tefachim?
If it goes up to 10 tefachim, but it's less than 3, then it's also a makam tur. Because no matter what it is, if it's in Rosh Hashanah and it goes over 10 tefachim, it becomes a makam tur. Anything in Rosh Hashanah over 10 tefachim is a makam tur.
Over 10 tefachim?
Anything over 10 tefachim, no matter how big it is a makam tur. Right, so the rules are as follows. If it's less than dalet al dalet, and it's higher, and it's less than 3, let's start from the beginning. If it's less than dalet al dalet, and it's lower than 3 tefachim, it's bottled to the ground, it's part of the Shus Rabbim. If it's above 3 tefachim, but it's less than dalet al dalet, it's not part of the Shus Rabbim, people avoid it, they'll trip over it, that's called a makam tur.
I thought it was until 10 tefachim.
And above 10 tefachim, no matter how big it is, above 10 tefachim, if it's small, it's still a makam tur, and if it's big, then it's a Rosh Hashanah. That's what you're referring to. What if I have a place that's dalet al dalet? So if I have a place that's dalet al dalet, that's only 3 tefachim high, right? That'll be a makam tur. But once it hits 10 tefachim, now it's a Rosh Hashanah. So now it becomes worse, because I can't pass from the Rosh Hashanah into Rosh Hashanah. I can only pass from Rosh Hashanah to makam tur. So the moment it's dalet al dalet, that becomes a Rosh Hashanah.
Never a carmelis in between?
I'm sorry. I see. You're right. A dalet al dalet is a carmelis. That's where I'm mistaken. If it's not, I apologize. Right? If it's not, so let's review everything. If it's not dalet al dalet, it's less than dalet al dalet. If it's up to 3 tefachim, it's bottled to Rosh Hashanah. If it's above 3 tefachim, it's a makam tur. And if it's above 10 tefachim, it's also a makam tur. If it is a full dalet al dalet, if it's less than 3 tefachim, it's still nothing. It's part of Rosh Hashanah. If it's above 3 tefachim, it's like Mati said, it's a carmelis, and it's also to move something from there to Rosh Hashanah or from there to Rosh Hashanah, or 4 amos within that. If it's only dalet al dalet, you can't do it 4 amos anyway. It's too small, right? And if it's above 10 tefachim and it's dalet al dalet, then it's a full-blown Rosh Hashanah.
So in order for it to be makam ptur, it has to be less than dalet al dalet and less than 10 tefachim.
No, less than dalet al dalet and more than 3 tefachim. Because even if it's higher than 10 tefachim, it's still going to be a makam tur.
Not a carmelis?
No.
So
It
Fire
can't be a
hydrant
carmelis
is the
unless it's dalet al
classic,
dalet.
right?
But a mailbox would be a Rosh Hashanah.
A mailbox would
The top of the
be.
mailbox would be Rosh
It depends what the base is.
What? You know, those
Oh, if the mailbox itself is dalet al
the
dalet.
mailbox, like you know those red mailboxes.
If it's a dalet al dalet.
They're at least 16 inches.
Okay, if it's dalet al dalet, then it's Rosh Hashanah.
Let's
If
assume
it's above
it's
10
More than
tefachim.
10 tefachim.
Yeah, then it's
That's
Rosh
Rosh
Hashanah.
Hashanah, but
So
a
then you
fire
wouldn't be able to put something
couldn't put
on
something
there.
up, right.
But a fire hydrant, you'd be able to.
I put it on the base of a lamppost once. The lamppost was very tall, but the base of the lamppost was below, and it was wide.
Doesn't have to be.
Well, those ballers, you know they have those ballers.
The height doesn't make a difference.
They protect the
4 by
gas
4.
meters.
It's just the width you're saying makes a difference.
That's what I'm saying.
That's
I always
right.
thought it was also the height.
What is the height?
The height is relevant
If it's
only.
less than dalet al dalet,
It doesn't matter. We
matter.
said that because you could have a pole that
You
goes
can have a
up.
pole that goes 100 feet high, and you have a hook on it, you can hang something.
If it's above 10 tefachim, you can hang something on. That's right.
Yeah.
But once you're above 10 tefachim, you're makam tur.
Right. As long as you're smaller than dalet al dalet.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so Zok to Gemara. Elaskova makam tur, but Almu kigoyin the less bay dalet al dalet. You didn't have dalet al dalet, and it was lower than 10 tefachim. So therefore, it's a regular makam tur, and that's what you're standing on. V'chiha, and it's similar to a case. The chi aser abdimi amar b'yochanan. They said, Makaim she'ein bo dalet al dalet tefachim. if you have a platform in Rishus Harabim that's not 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim, mutter levnei Rishus HaYachid v'levnei Rishus Harabim lakatif alav. So you had this threshold that was not 4 by 4. It was 3 tvachim high. It was in between Rishus Harabim and Rishus HaYachid. Both sides are allowed to put things on it. As long as the Rishus Harabim doesn't pass it over this place into the Rishus HaYachid, and vice versa. And that's what we're referring to as this Makam Tur. So let's just chazar it over to get it clear. If it's less than Dalet al Dalet, anything that's under 3 Tvachim is Batal to Rishus Harabim. If it's 3 Tvachim or more, and it's less than Dalet al Dalet, it's a Makam Tur. When it crosses the 10 Tvachim height, then it's for sure a Makam Tur, because Rishus Harabim only goes up to 10 Tvachim. If it is a full Dalet al Dalet, again, if it's below 3 Tvachim, it doesn't count. If it's above 3 Tvachim, it's a Carmelus, and if it goes higher than 10 Tvachim, it's a Rishus HaYachid. Okay. Zok the Heilige Gemara weiter. Amar, uvat shelo yitel balabayis v'noisein lo'ani and me'ani v'noisein balabayis. You cannot be an Indian reservation and pass things back and forth. V'im notal v'nosan, if you did it, shloshtan paturin, everybody will be patur, because there was no malacha done by anybody fully. Freik the Gemara, lema tahavat tiyuv to the Rava. If you're saying they're all patur, this contradicts what Rava said. To Omar Rava said, Hamaver chayfetz mitchilas daled l'soif daled b'shus harabim. If someone carries a chayfetz from one point to another point, and it's a full 4 amas, we know that's for sure malacha deraisa. But even avapi shehevirei derech olav, even the way you carried it was you carried it over your head. So while you were transporting it, it was above 10 tvachim. So you made a kira from Rishus Harabim, and now you're in a Makam Tur. You're above 10 tvachim. You walk 4 amos with it in the air over your shoulder, and then you put it down. You'll still be chayiv. So, frek the Gemara, why are you chayiv there? Why is it any different than traveling over the Makam Tur of this Eskufa? If during transit I go over a Makam Tur, our Brisa seems to say that it's potter, and Rava said it's chayiv. So tomorrow there's a very big difference. Chasam loynach hachanach. There, it never stopped to rest for a minute in the air. You make a kira, you walk 4 amos, you put it down. Here, the guy in the middle, he picks it up and he brings it to him. That's a stop. When it's by him, it's a stop. And then even though it's in one movement, but when it's by his chest, it's considered a stop. And then when he moves on, it's considered a new move. And that's why, by our case, it's chayiv, it's potter. But in Rava's case, in fact, where there's no pause in the middle, it's going to be potter. When I say pause, I don't mean necessarily time-wise there's a pause, but the mere fact that it stopped in the center, it passed by my chest,
Even though it's
my one,
also to
that's
do
called a
it.
pause.
It's potter.
Sorry?
It's also to do it.
That's right. That's correct. Yeah, of course you hold it in the center. Because as I pick it up from my right side, and now it's right in front of my chest, and I'm continuing. So this is called a noch. Zok the Gemara weiter. Acher moimim, a skupa mishameshesh shtei rishuyos. So going on to analyze that brisa, there was another sheet brought in the brisa from Acher, and it says a skupa mishameshesh shtei rishuyos. A skupa can be, depending on the situation, it can either be Rishus Harabim or Rishus HaYachid. B'zman she'pesach pasuach, if the door to the Mavi is opened, kilafnim, we consider the Eskufa as it's a Rishus HaYachid. Pesach nol, if the door is closed, kilachutz, we consider it a Rishus Harabim. Frek the Gemara, the afal gav, the lesle lechi, you want to say that when the door is open, it's considered kilafnim. But the problem is, there's no lechi. What do you mean there's no lechi? Even if there is a lechi, since the lechi only works from the outside surface, normally the lechi would be placed right on that askupa. So if the lechi is right on that askupa, and the lechi only works to the exterior of the lechi, so that means the place where the askupa is, which is where the lechi is considered Rishus Harabim. Because again, here's my doorway, it goes like this, and here's my lechi. The lechi only fixes and makes it Rishus HaYachid behind the lechi, not above. If this lechi is sitting right on that threshold, that means that threshold does not have the protection, so to speak, of the lechi. So, Frek the Gemara, how could you say that the Mokam HaSkupa itself has a din of Rishus HaYachid? If there's a lechi on it, you need the lechi that's on it only helps for behind it. Because the Amar Rab Chaim Bar Guya Amar Rav, Toicha Pesach, the place in the doorway itself, tzorech lechi acher latirei. You would need another lechi in front of the askupa, because the lechi only protects from its back. V'chitema, the less bedalad al dalad. If you want to say that we're not speaking about an askupa that has a depth of 4 tvachim, we're speaking about an askupa that has less than the depth of 4 tvachim, and there you might want to say that the lechi does work. There you might want to say that the lechi does work. Zok to Gemara, that wouldn't work either, because v'amar Rab Chaim bar Guya, amar Rav, toicha Pesach, aval bi she'ein bar dalad al dalad, tzorech lechi acher latirei. Even if your askupa is not 4 tvachim, it doesn't make a difference. The lechi only protects what's behind the lechi. So the question is, you say when the door is open, the mokam askupa is considered part of the inside. It doesn't have a lechi. Amar Vid Amar Rav, hacha beskufas mavi askinan. We're talking about a mavi, and you didn't use a lechi, rather you used a koira. Chetch of mekoira, the chetch she'ein mekoira. So you have the askupa of a mavi, and it's a full 4 tvachim, but only 2 tvachim is covered, and 2 tvachim are not covered. Which 2 tvachim were covered? The kiruya of klape pnim. The 2 inner tvachim are covered, the 2 outer tvachim are not covered. And the door is in the center. The door is in the center. I'm sorry. And the door is inside of the second lechi. So therefore you say, Pesach Pesuach Kilafnim. If the Pesach is Pesuach, anything that's under that koira is considered inside. Pesach no, if the door is closed, anything that's under the koira is kilachutz. So this needs a little explanation. Now the way the koira works, unlike a lechi, where the back of the lechi is the border, by a koira, it's the front of the koira, that's the border. So let's visualize this. I have a doorpost that's 4 tefachim deep, and the first 2 tefachim, as I'm coming in from the Rishus HaRabim, are uncovered. It is bare. The second 2 tefachim are covered, right? If the door is opened, from the front of that koira to the floor, it's considered inside. But if the door is closed, it doesn't work at all. Why doesn't it work? Why don't you still say there's still those 2 tefachim inside that the lechi protects? The teretz is this whole concept that we look at the koira. How does the koira work? We look at it like the koira has a wall coming down from it. That concept that we have this imaginary wall at the front of the koira only works if the wall is enclosing a space that's 4 tefachim. But since this koira is only 2 tefachim, if the door is closed and the koira comes down, between the wall, the barrier that the door is, and the imaginary barrier that the front of the koira is, there's only 2 tefachim. You don't say that there's an imaginary wall when all it's enclosing is 2 tefachim. But if, in fact, the koira was 4 tefachim, and it covered the whole 4 tefachim of a doorstep, then even with the door closed, the full doorstep would be protected, because we have that imaginary wall that now is surrounding that askupa from all 4 sides. Does that make sense? Okay.
Just a sports analogy, I'm sorry to do it for those who are sports. In football, all you need to do to score a touchdown is to poke the nose of the football, break the plane of the goal line. You don't have to get the whole ball over. In hockey, the entire puck has to be behind the red line to count it as a goal. I think that's what the difference between the koira and the lechi is. The lechi, you have to be completely inside. When football, you do is break the plane, and they have cameras looking down. Did he break it?
So there's an imaginary wall.
Imaginary will break the glass. On the other hand, the guy who's bringing out of the end zone can't just break the glass. He has to bring it entirely back into the field to play.
You know what's funny? I find the example more complicated than the actual case.
But do you understand? You know exactly what we did. You know exactly what I'm referring to.
It was clearly, the rules were clearly written by Jews.
Or certainly implemented.
Just wait till you get. Football is so complicated. It was probably written by a team that was cheating, that was making up the rules after the goal. Okay, so I'm sorry. So we're up to Rabbi Marav Hakam Askubas Mavu Yaskinon. So you have a 4 tvachim deep a skupa, chetzev mekor, but only the inner two tvachim are covered. The chetzev sheni mekor, the outer two tvachim are not covered. The kirui of klape pnim, and the two tvachim that are covered are the inner two tvachim. Pesach b'suach, the door is opened. Kilafnim, you say that the end of the koyer comes down, creates an imaginary wall, an imaginary barrier, and closes off everything behind it. But Pesach, no. If the door is closed, so now if we make this imaginary wall, there'll only be two tvachim in between the two walls. That doesn't count. Therefore, kalachotz, it's as if there's no wall there, and therefore everything outside of the doorway is considered outside. Rav Ashi Amar, la'olam be'skupas bayis eskinan. We're not talking about someone entering from the Rishus HaRabim into a mavli. We're actually referring to somebody entering from a chotzer into a home. So there's different levels. You go from Bathurst Street onto Carmichael. When you turn onto Carmichael, actually let's take it differently. The Rishus HaRabim is a 401. You go from the 401 into the Mavli, which is Bathurst Street, right? When you get off of Bathurst Street, there's a whole bunch of other streets, right? Like Carmichael, like Yossi. Those are considered chatzeris because it's another smaller artery off the main artery that also opens up into multiple homes. And then off of each of these individual streets, you have individual homes. So we're talking about the entrance from Carmichael into Yossi Murmelstein's house, or into Mac Tenenbaum's house, or into who else lives on Carmichael? Or into the Roof's house. Oh, the Roof's house is Rishus HaRabim. It's not the game. The Roof's house is Rishus HaRabim.
Bobov has.
So it also has a din of a Carmelist, right? It's Rishus HaYachid, it needs an Erev, but you're headed into a bias. So let's see how that makes a difference. We're speaking about a skupas bayis, and what's unique about a house is normally the entire entrance is covered. That's just the norm. They had covered entrances to protect the mishalachim that were waiting for their money from the rain. So you had an entranceway that was 4 tvachim deep, and instead of having one large board, one large roof that was 4 tvachim deep that covered the whole entrance, you actually took 2 boards. And instead of having 2 boards that were 2 tvachim, so they touched each other, you had 2 boards that was a tefach and a half, which left a 1 tefach gap in between them, right? So I had a board that was a tefach and a half on the inner edge of the skupa. I had a board that was a tefach and a half at the outer edge of the skupa, meaning there was a tefach of open air in between, and you had your door lined up exactly in that space. So that's our construction.
It doesn't say that.
What's wrong? The door is below. It would be inside. Would be inside. Well, so let's see how it play. Let's see how the chips fall. So we're speaking about by the skupa of going to a bais where it was normal to have a greater area. You didn't just have a koyer, but you'd cover the entire skupa. But instead of using one big piece, he used 2 separate pieces. This piece was not 4, and I said, for instance, it was a tefach and a half. The second one was neither 4. So I'm just using as an example. It was a 1.5 and 1.5. Ve'ein bein zul zu shloisha. And I said there was 1 tefach in between. So you didn't have 3 tefachim. The significance of 3 tefachim is we know there's a halacha of lavud. Anytime there's a gap of less than 3 tefachim, we look at it like it's filled in. So in this case, those 2 boards, we look at it like they're filled in, and you have a board that's completely 4 tvachim, covering the entire skupa. And you hung the door right below the gap.
Even if they were less than 1.5. Even if they were 1 inch.
That's right. Correct. I was just giving an example.
Right.
I was just giving an example. That's absolutely correct.
No minimum width that the boards have to be?
I don't know, but one is for sure. One tefach. So I don't know if there's. I don't think there is. I think you say love it even with threads.
Okay.
I have a joke that proves it.
Oh.
With the God of joke, right?
Yeah.
With the God of Damoritz, right? And you hung the door right underneath the gap. Pesach Pesuach, if the door is opened, kilafnim, you'll say that those 2 boards have lavud and they're joined. And the reason why you say that is because when you look at it from the outside, it almost looks like one plane, one long piece. And therefore the entire skupa is covered and the entire skupa is considered inside. But Pesach knows if the door is closed, so now I'm looking at it from the outside, I only see that little bit. So because of that, we don't say lavud, and therefore only the part that's inside the door is kilafnim.
Where's the door?
But the door was hung right underneath the gap in between the two boards. So when the door is opened, we say those two boards are like one piece and the whole skufa is covered and it's all like a Rishus HaYachid. If the door is closed, then you only say that what's inside the door is part of the Rishus HaYachid, what's outside the door is not part of the Rishus HaYachid, because the fact that there's a door there doesn't allow the loved to occur.
Does the door opening inwards or outwards makes no difference?
I don't think so. In the Arshko pictures, it shows that it opens to the inside. But I don't know if that's
Because usually you want it, I guess that's...
I don't know if that's by design or if that's just how they do the picture. I don't know.
If they send something up,
If we continue learning, for sure people will come to stare us. What if the skufa was 10 high, the rachva daled, and 4 wide? So Monty and I discussed this earlier. Harezu rishus latzma, that makes it into rishus hayachid. This is a proof to Rabbi Yitzchak Rav Dimai. Rabbi Yitzchak Rav Dimai, Rav Meir used to say, if you have two individual rishus hayachids, or if you have two rishus harabims that are side by side with a fence in between, what if you had a rishus hayachid, and in the rishus hayachid you had a post that was 10 tefachim high, the rachav dal, and it was 4 by 4, so you have a rishus hayachid within a rishus hayachid. So you have two rishus hayachids that abut each other. Also, the katev olav, you're not allowed to go from one rishus hayachid to another rishus hayachid. Gzeira mishum tel b'rishus harabim. Because if we let you put something from a rishus hayachid onto a platform that's in rishus hayachid, we're afraid you might do the same thing when you're in a rishus harabim, and there it would be a deraisa.
So you have a shed in your backyard. So that shed is like a separate.
So the Gemara's case is not if it's a shed. The Gemara's case is if you have a platform. So it's probably referring only to a
If you have a
platform.
table in your house,
A
you
picnic
can't
table.
put something on it?
It's in your house, it's in a Rishus HaYachid.
No,
We're
it's,
talking about Rosh Hashanah.
It's all
no, but it's not a different rishus. The table is not a different
still
rishus.
the Rish-
What makes it a
So how this?
I guess if you're in a yard and you have a platform in it,
Carmel is.
so that doesn't.
No, so he's talking about in a Rosh Hashanah where you have two.
No, we're talking about in the rishus hayachid. If you're in the rishus hayachid and you have a platform in the rishus hayachid,
So that's the table in
so
Rosh Hashanah.
I don't know if a table counts because a table maybe you can use
You said
underneath it.
Rishus HaYachid goes all the way up to the sky, own the whole
If you
air.
have a shed in your backyard, you can't take something from your house to the shed.
Rashi says, let's look at Rashi. Rashi says that the point of contention is, if you look at the fourth line from the bottom of Rashi, so it seems like this gezerah is only if there's two different levels. So if you have two different levels, then we have a gezerah that if this occurred in Rishus Harabim, you might end up putting something from the Rishus Harabim into Rishus Hayachid. So it seems like the problem is only if it's that number,
Hayachid?
Zegavoya.
Which Rishus HaYachid? You're standing inside Rishus Harabim.
No, we're talking about you're in a Rishus Hayachid. Let's say you're in a Rishus Hayachid,
Yes.
and in the Rishus Hayachid you have a platform that's Tfacham high.
Which is really Rishus HaYachid also.
It is Rishus Hayachid.
It is
You're not
Rishus-
allowed to put something from this Rishus Hayachid onto that Rishus Hayachid.
Even though
Even though they're both Rishus Hayachid.
this platform
Is Rishus Hayachid.
is Rishus HaYachid.
Correct.
You can't go onto higher
From one Rishus Hayachid to another you cannot do it. Why? Because we're afraid if this happened in Rishus Harabim, you wouldn't have the difference and you would do it again. You would also do it. There you wouldn't be allowed to.
But a platform in Rishus Harabim is a Makom Keturah.
No. If it was 4 Tvachim by 4 Tvachim by 10 Tvachim high, it's Rishus Hayachid.
Or you can't put something on down.
From Rishus Harabim to Rishus Hayachid, you can't. So therefore, we don't need to let you go from Rishus Hayachid to Rishus Hayachid because we're afraid if you go from Rishus Hayachid to Rishus Hayachid, you might also go from Rishus Harabim to Rishus Hayachid. So Moses is asking every table, why doesn't every table qualify? I'm not sure. It's a very good question. Why doesn't every table qualify? So I'll have to do my homework on it. So Moti,